See, I found the pink ones. Hey friends! Last time we talked about your confirmation bias, and if you missed that episode, just go ahead and click or tap right there to watch it now and catch up. Moving forward, I want to talk about all of the work that we've been doing. You as a devil's advocate, you've been laying the foundation to become a better devil's advocate by learning about your bias, learning about the confirmation bias, challenging your bias, and listening and learning about the stories of other people. So just round of applause for you. I'm very proud of you and thank you for being here because you're well on your way to an amazing journey and a new way of thinking, a new way of living actually, because if you are able to look past your bias more often than not, you'll be able to connect to the human race more because you're not just going to see everybody as these boxes that our society pushes them into. You'll be actually able to see them as people, which is wonderful, and which is something we lose out way too often on in the reality of our societies. With the work that we've been doing, I want to start talking about the concept of staying humble and assuming goodwill. The fact of the matter is, the vast majority of people are not going to be interested in this. The vast majority of people are not going to be interested in challenging their bias, even telling them that their bias is going to be insulting to them. Back to that story with my uncle. There is no way that he is ever going to understand and accept that he is fully biased by his own prison that he's put himself into because he declares himself as unbiased. And there's nothing I'm going to be able to do, there's nothing you're going to be able to do, there's nothing anyone else is going to be able to do to convince him differently. We can try our little tricks that we're talking about here and that we're going to get into more in future episodes on how to change somebody's perspective. But by the bottom line, most people are not going to be interested in this line of work. Most people are not going to be interested in shifting their bias. And so while you're doing the work to change your bias, it could become very frustrating to listen to other people and realize how truly biased they are, whether that's a family member, whether that's somebody you're dating or you're married to, whether that's just your friends, just some random person on the internet. You can, once you start to see your own bias and what it consists of, and you start listening to other people's stories, you'll start to really see the biases everywhere. And it can start to become really, really, really frustrating to deal with. Because everyone, while they are biased, is not going to accept that they're biased. That's why today I wanted to talk about assuming goodwill and intent in people, because you don't really know exactly where they're coming from. And most people out there are not looking to be hostile to anybody. There's obviously internet trolls, and those people, you know, that's a whole other story, a whole other episode for another time. But most people are out here just looking to have a conversation. And even though they may not truly understand what a debate consists of and may see any disagreement and any challenge to their opinion as an attack, which is, you know, sad that that's becoming more and more common these days. But even if they are, try to approach each one of these situations for assuming goodwill of the other person. Because if you can come to this conversation with a positive mindset, if you can come to the conversation with a good idea of what you want to talk about, where they're coming from, and just again seeing them as a human, really emphasizing that human connection that you have to people, because yes, seeing everybody's biases everywhere can be very, very frustrating. It also enables you to just connect to people more, be able to be like, yeah, I don't agree with this person in any shape or form, but I can see where they're coming from. This person has the exact same human experience as I do. They've lived the same life, they've experienced the same racial injustice, you know, but maybe we disagree on a few things. And so we can start to see human stories and human experience in action. And with this, you'll be able to talk to people a little bit more, because again, most people are not interested in changing their bias. But if you lead by example and you start becoming that role model for people, then they can maybe start to shift their mindset. And I'm talking about a very narrow situation here, but I've talked to a lot of friends over the years about their biases, and I've had a lot of strong-headed friends who are just like, nope, this is what I believe. I will not be convinced otherwise. Why are we even having this conversation? And for me, I had to just keep sort of prying at it a little bit, being mischievous in the sense of just like, okay, I know you don't want to talk about this. Okay, I'm not going to challenge you. Let's just talk about what your beliefs are exactly. And then through that and talking to them and listening to them, they were able to look at their own bias a little bit more, and eventually, through years of effort, eventually they were actually willing to change their bias and their opinion. And some people in my life have actually changed their opinions and flipped political views completely and flipped moral stances completely, because these are just opinions that we hold, and those opinions can constrict us really hard if we don't do anything with it. Your bias is just a mental muscle, and without that experience and that exercise, it's going to become rigid and really painful to exercise. Just the same way as if you're not doing push-ups every day or crunches or lifting weights or anything, your body becomes stiff and it's really painful to really go. That's why they say no pain, no gain when you're exercising, because it's supposed to hurt in the beginning. It's supposed to hurt. You're supposed to be tearing that muscle so then you can give it downtime to relax, heal back up, and then it becomes strong again. And that's the same thing with the bias. And most people, since they're not interested in flexing their bias, they're just going to become extremely rigid. So, it may take years. It may never happen. But the important thing to remember when you're trying to be devil's advocate is that you stay on message, that you stay positive, and that you assume good intent with everybody you're talking to, and maybe talk to them about when they feel challenged and whether it's the smallest disagreement or not. They're like, is this really that offensive to you? Why is this offensive to you? And start to get into their head and their headspace a little bit more so you can connect with that human element. And once you do that, and again, it may take some years, but once you do that, you'll be able to reach them and possibly change their perspective, regardless if that's your mission or not. Just opening people's minds to their bias will help them just see the world in a whole new light and a whole new life. And that's all we got for today, but thank you very much for being here. And again, I'm very proud of you for going down this adventure, because it's not easy. It is scary, it is hard, it is frustrating sometimes. Not gonna lie, but it's worth it, 100%, because once you see your bias and once you admit that you're confirmation bias, you'll be able to expand your mind to so much more. And we're going to talk a bit more next week on some of those tips and tricks on, once you reach that human element, how can you shift people's perspectives? How can you start to get them to think differently and maybe change their opinions from a political party or moral affiliation or anything and all of the above? Thank you very much for coming. Bye, friends.